In a recent press conference by the Ultimate Fighting Championship, it has been announced that Jon Jones will be off of UFC 200 due to a potential violation informed to the company by the United States Anti-Doping Association from an out-of-competition test that was done back in June. Results are still pending whether it is a failed test for the former UFC light heavyweight champion and current interim light heavyweight champion, but due to the nature of the results and how quickly approaching the fight card that he is set to be on, or was set to be on in UFC 200, he has been pulled from the card. As of right now, Daniel Cormier will not be on the card. A opponent to fill in does not look likely, and Mark Hunt versus Brock Lesnar will be the new main event of UFC 200 moving forward, and it will still be a 3-round affair. Since Jones failed a out-of-competition test before his first fight against Daniel Cormier at UFC 183, this will be a potential ban of 2 years if it does come back as a failed test for the upstate New York native. And while many are upset about the results of this, the only person really to blame is Jon Jones. And if you watch the press conference, UFC 182 is actually when Jones fought Cormier for the first time, just to correct myself. But Dana White was asked at the press conference, you can watch the video on the UFC website, whether or not this program is good considering it cost him this main event. And he said, this is going to happen. This is going to be a process. And he goes, it's a good thing that people are getting caught when they should have. Yeah, it still sucks that Jon is off this card and this main event's not going to happen. But this card is so loaded that even losing Jon Jones, it's still a great fight. So Mark Hunt versus Brock Lesnar is the new main event. As of right now, at time of recording, there hasn't been an announcement as of which fight will get moved up to the main card. But stick to our Facebook page, facebook.com/BeyondTheCagePodcast, and I will update my official UFC 200 main card picks when the updated card has been announced. But as of right now, Daniel Cormier will not be fighting on the card. It doesn't look likely that he will get a replacement. I don't see a replacement happening in this short a time span, and it stinks because Cormier, of course, was supposed to fight Jones back at UFC 197. He had to pull out of that fight due to injury. Now, this situation with Jon Jones, again, he is innocent until proven guilty. There will be a process. He has a chance for a B sample or the backup sample to be tested as well. And at the very least, he could be out just a few months if everything comes back correct. But if not, he will be facing a potential 2-year ban, which would keep Jones out of competition until 2018, at which point he would be 30 years old and would only be having fought just the one time against OSP in about a 3-year span. I guess it'd be a little over 3 years, depending on the retroactive date, which it should be to the time of the test, which would be, I think, the first week of June. So, Jon Jones out. It sucks. We don't know whether it's going to be 2 years, but if it is, I don't know if it's the end of his career because he would only be 30 years old, but that's a tough thing to come back from, just being out that long, and two, it costing the UFC the main event of what is supposed to be the biggest card in the company's history, and it's your second offense. This could be the end of Jon Jones in the UFC. It really could. And many people thought, going back to when he first got the title, that the only person to beat Jon Jones would be himself. And that once again rings true here in this situation. And if this is a 2-year suspension for John, it's unfortunate because you had a guy that could have went down as the greatest of all time. And even with the numbers he's just put up in a few years span, you can make the case. But with all this stemming around him, it pushes him back. And maybe he doesn't care about legacies and his place in history and whatnot. Maybe he does. I don't know. It may not matter to him. But it could affect how he is perceived moving forward, not just with the UFC, but with any organization, if he does in fact get suspended for 2 years. And unlike the Nick Diaz thing, where again, whether that was kind of a botched thing and they were kind of hunting him, but in terms of being out for a long period of time, unlike kind of Nick Diaz, John is still young. He can still make a return to the sport even at 30 years old if this happens. And while it's disappointing, you can be pissed, you can be mad, you can be angry. It's as part of the game. And it's good that the UFC has this organization in the USADA catching these guys, whether it was a performance-enhancing drug or some type of recreational drug or pill or whatever the case may be. It's good to keep the sport clean. And it's about integrity more so than it is about just making money. And at least in this instance, the card's not going to be canceled. We're still going to see fights, a great night of fights, and it puts a little bit of a damper on it, but to me, you're going to see 2 championship fights. Amanda Nunes, Miesha Tate, Frankie Edgar, Jose Aldo. You're going to see the return of a former heavyweight champion against one of the best strikers to ever step foot inside the octagon. You're going to see another former champion in Cain Velasquez try to come back into title contention. And depending on what gets put on the card with DC and Jones moving off of, you're going to see a top 5 matchup in the women's bantamweight division, former champion trying to avenge a loss against a top contender, or you could potentially see the rising star in the UFC come onto the main card. So a lot of options for the UFC. I think probably because they maybe been promoting Kat and Juliana as the main event for FS1, I wouldn't be shocked if we see TJ against Rafael get moved up, but that's just me speculating here. Either way, again, stay tuned to our Facebook page, facebook.com/BeyondTheCagePodcast. And I'm glad I was able to have another episode this week to talk about this situation, and it definitely is a shock. And it's a shock from the standpoint because everything was going well. Dana White even said that at the press conference. Everything was going well. There were no injuries, none of this. And I think that's why it's a shock. John Jones in itself testing positive or potentially testing positive for some type of banned substance or performance-enhancing drugs is not crazy. That's not the crazy thing to happen. It's just crazy that it's happening so close to this event. And once again, it's an out-of-competition test. It's not a test that was actually set for the fight, which is what he got in trouble with the last time, stemming just after his win over Cormier. So what I think could happen as potential repercussions, I don't think he gets stripped of the interim title immediately. I think that will be resolved once all the test results are out. So if it does come down to a 2-year suspension, obviously he will be stripped of the interim title. Daniel Cormier will be the undisputed light heavyweight champion. The UFC will move forward as him being champion. And with Anthony Rumble Johnson set to fight Glover Teixeira in July, or rather August. They were going to be fighting in July, but now August. I don't know if one of those gentlemen would move off to fight Daniel Cormier, possibly in September or early October, or would Alexander Gustafsson, a guy who had a very close fight with DC, in fact, Daniel Cormier's last fight, would he somehow get back into the fold and get a rematch against Cormier? I'm not sure. I think any of those options are viable, or does DC simply wait till Rumble and Glover plays itself out and he faces the winner of that, and that would put him potentially not fighting until November or December, I would imagine. So, I don't know. Really, we got to wait to see how the situation plays out, because, again, there is a scenario where the test was okay, the B sample was okay, and Jones is able to return to competition. So we'll just have to wait and see on that, but I'm hoping for a good result, because I would not like to see John Jones banned for 2 years. I would like to see him fight Daniel Cormier for a second time to prove who is the #1 light heavyweight in the world. That's what I would like to see happen. So I can only hope for that, but if it doesn't, got to move on and start looking at other potential fights to get excited about. Let's get to the Ultimate Fighter finale. The 23rd season has finished. 6 fights will be shown on the main card between Team Joanna and Team Claudia on Fox Sports 1 Friday night starting at 10 p.m. Eastern. The first fight of the evening will be in the lightweight division, as 2 prospects of the division will battle, as Joaquim Silva will take on Andrew Holbrook. Looking at Andrew Holbrook, the American, comes into the fight with a great record at 11-0. So far, Holbrook has submitted 9 of his 11 opponents in his victories and is 1-0 in the UFC, winning his only fight against Ramsey Nijem. That was last year at Fox 16, so it's been over a year since we've seen Andrew Holbrook fight in the UFC, and he's taking on another undefeated fighter in Joaquim Silva, who has finished 7 of his 8 career victories, 4 knockouts, 3 submissions. So far, also just 1-0 in the UFC, as he defeated Nazareno Malgari, if I said that correctly, at UFC 191. That was in September 2015, so it's been quite a while since he has fought as well. And Holbrook's going to be a much bigger guy than Joaquim. Joaquim's listed at 5'8", 5'11" for Holbrook, and I was going to say that the layoff for Holbrook could affect him, but the fact that Silva's been out for almost as long, I think that kind of negates each other, and I think the size difference and the submission ability, that's going to be tricky for Silva to deal with. Now, his nickname's Neto Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, BJJ officially, so obviously this guy prides himself on his jiu-jitsu, but when you have a guy that big and that strong, that sometimes can outweigh technical skill. Sometimes it does, as weird as that sounds. Now, normally technique will usually prevail, but sometimes if a dude's just bigger and stronger than you, sometimes there's not much you can do, especially, at least in MMA, when you also factor in you're getting punched in the face. You're not just simply working for a submission, and that also has a big deal in getting an actual submission. So, while I think this is going to be a close fight, I think it could potentially be kind of boring. And interesting that it's the kickoff fight to the card, because both guys have been out for a while. Most fans, even including myself, I had to research a little bit here, didn't even know who these guys really were. So, I think it's an interesting choice. I probably would have picked the next fight to kick off the card, but that is how the UFC has decided to stack it. I'm actually really excited for this, as maybe one of the best prospects coming out of Asia right now, Doo Ho Choi, the Korean Superboy, as he's taking on Thiago Tavares. Choi had a awesome UFC debut, winning with a incredible knockout, and Thiago Tavares, I believe his last fight, that's right, he submitted Clay Guida in just 39 seconds, and that's coming off one of the best fights of 2015 in his TK loss to Brian Ortega. And really, since moving down to 145, Tavares has looked good. He has won 3 out of his last 4 fights, the 1 loss coming to Ortega, and again, what was an incredible fight. He's now taking on, again, one of the rising stars in the UFC, and definitely one of the bright prospects coming out of Asia right now. And 13-1 is Doo Ho Choi. His only loss coming nearly 6 years ago, actually a little over 6 years ago. And he's fought twice so far in the UFC, both by way of knockout and both in the first round. His last fight coming over Sam Sicilia back in South Korea in November of 2015. So if this fight stays standing, the Korean Superboy definitely has a chance to win this fight. I mean, 10 of 13 victories by knockout. This dude just has some serious power. You don't see power like this too often at a weight class like 145 pounds. And for Tavares, I think, you know, he's listed smaller at 5'7", 5'9" for Doo Ho Choi, but I think he's a little bit bigger. Again, he fought a lot at 155 pounds, and I never thought like he was amazingly undersized. But the submission game that Thiago Tavares has is amazingly good. Maybe only second to Charles Oliveira in this division, 14 of 20 career victories by submission. So Tavares, to me, just has to get this fight to the ground. I don't think you want to stay standing at any time or give Choi any space in this fight. He has to keep constant pressure and has to stay close to him, because if Choi can uncork one of those, really either hand, it can end your night. And I think it's going to be a fun fight. Tavares, even though he is more of a grappler, a guy that usually is exciting. He's trying to work for damage. He's trying to work for submission. He's working for position. And I've seen nothing but excitement from the Korean Superboy, so I think this is going to be a fantastic fight and could end up being fight of the night. Next fight of the evening will be in the lightweight division, as former Bellator lightweight champion Will Brooks will make his long-awaited UFC debut against longtime UFC veteran and former Ultimate Fighter winner Ross Pearson. Pearson, I think, is the better stand-up fighter, has more knockout power, but there's been a few fights in recent memory that Pearson has kind of been out-grappled, and for most of his UFC tenure, I would say Ross Pearson is a guy that has had great takedown defense, but his fight against Evan Dunham, which was in July of last year, he got really handled, in my opinion, in the grappling department. Then he was able to nearly defeat Paul Felder in September 2015. Then he fought Francisco Trinaldo earlier this year. Thought it didn't look that good in that fight. And then came back in March to defeat Chad Laprise. That was a close fight. He only won that one nearly by split decision. He's traded wins and losses in his last, really, pretty much since his no contest with the illegal knee to Melvin Guillard. He has traded wins and losses dating back to his loss there against Diego Sanchez in June of 2014. And even though he's only 31 years old, he's fought 30 times professionally, you know, you would still think he has something left in the tank, but I think at this point he's kind of relegated to gatekeeper. And he's still a solid fighter. He can still beat guys in the UFC, and I think is an apt test for Will Brooks. Will Brooks is a guy I think has a lot of potential, a guy that I think instantly, with his signing, factors in to the UFC lightweight title picture, and giving him a guy like Ross Pearson is really a good test to see where he's at, to see if it was just simply Bellator didn't have any good guys. And if he can get by a guy like Ross Pearson, a solid veteran, I think that does mean something. I think it means that this guy isn't just a big fish in a small pond. This guy can come into the UFC and can be a contender right away. So while I'm not expecting amazing fireworks, because Will Brooks is not necessarily the biggest finisher, he really likes to dominate his opponents, I do think that Ross Pearson will have his hands full, and we'll see if he's been in main events and stuff that's Bellator, but we'll see if there's any sort of adjustment to the octagon or fighting lights, or maybe even fighting Ross Pearson. I don't know. We shall see. But I am excited to have Will Brooks in the UFC, and I think this is a great first fight for him. Getting to the two Ultimate Fighter finale fights, one in the women's strawweight division and the other in the light heavyweight division. Starting first with the women's strawweight fight, as Tatiana Suarez will take on Amanda Cooper. Both girls took a much different path to getting to the final here of the Ultimate Fighter, as Suarez really used her great size and wrestling ability to overwhelm her opponents in her 3 fights and really kind of made it look easy to get to the finals, whereas Amanda Cooper had a really nice submission victory in the fight to get into the house, and then really kind of had 2 wars to get to this final. And not just a war within the cage, but outside, as she had a big struggle to make weight that 3rd time, having never fought previously at 115 pounds. She had previously been competing, at least for Invicta, at 125. That was her normal weight class. Decided to drop down to 115 for a chance to compete on the show, for a chance at a UFC contract. And as much as I am rooting for her, she's from Michigan, so she's a local girl here. Grew up in Brighton, which is about an hour outside of Detroit, not far from me. And she's going to have her hands full. I think she's the better finisher than Suarez, definitely the better stand-up fighter. Suarez is definitely the better wrestler. I would say submission-wise, in terms of ability of pulling off submissions, maybe Suarez is a little better. But, oh man, this is a tough fight, because even though Suarez has been really big, Cooper is a very solid 115, and I think that may negate the ability. I think the key for this fight is how Cooper will do off her back against Suarez, because I think Suarez will be able to take Cooper down. It's just what Amanda can do from that standpoint on. Sanchez against Roundtree. I think Sanchez is definitely the favorite with good reason. I think he has solid stand-up, but he, to me, doesn't have the power or striking ability that Roundtree has, especially in that last fight. In the fight to get to the final, Roundtree looked really good. I mean, he had a great fight to get into the house. Of course, he was fighting his buddy in Corey in his first fight. That may have affected his performance. Maybe it didn't. I think it may have. Losing, he got his chance to come back, had a war there, and against Josh Stansbury. And I think standing up, he is the better fighter. But Sanchez has proven that he is a very good grappler, can get the fight to the ground, and can beat you up and submit you. And from that aspect, with Roundtree losing his first fight, or I guess technically second fight, in the preliminary round to Corey, getting submitted, I think that really bodes well for Sanchez. And that's to say that Roundtree didn't go back and work on his submissions and all that, but Sanchez definitely has really good jiu-jitsu, and I think that will be the difference in this fight. Before I get to the main event of the Ultimate Fighter 23 finale, which will be for the UFC Strawweight Championship, I got a chance to interview both Claudia Gadelha and Joanna Jedrzejczyk and get their thoughts on their main event fight on Friday night. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Beyond the Cage. I am your host, Jim Graham. Joining me today, we have a special guest on the line. She was one of the coaches for this past season of the Ultimate Fighter Season 23, where she coached against Joanna Jedrzejczyk. She is currently the #1 contender in the UFC's strawweight division. She is Claudia Gadelha. And Claudia, thanks for coming on Beyond the Cage.
Thank you.
Looking at this season of the Ultimate Fighter, looking at this season of the Ultimate Fighter, what surprised you in terms of your team? Was there anybody that you thought performed better than you first expected, and was there anyone that performed worse than you thought, specifically on your team?
So, when I met the fighters, I got the record and everything about them, and I went home and I didn't even sleep the first day, and I studied everybody, so I knew 100% of everybody that was competing in the show, and I was I was trying to get the well-rounded fighters to my team, So since the beginning, since they were doing the fights to get into the house, I was watching everybody and I knew about everybody there. So I wasn't surprised because I already knew the talented ones, and I got them for me.
Now, when the actual season took place and the fights happened, did you expect to win as many fights as you did, at least in the preliminary round, winning 7 of 8 fights?
Yeah, I got to pick the first fighter. So Joanna got to pick the first fight, and she picked a bad fight to us. But I knew because Corey was hurt. So I knew that if Corey wins the fight and I get to pick the fights, I could have beat her the whole time. You know, um, the fighters that I picked were very well rounded, and I knew who would be the best matchup to each of them, and that's what I did. I just choose the best matchup and the best time to each of them.
Now, looking at one of your fighters that you coached in Amanda Cooper, she of course struggled with the weight, especially in that last fight, to make it to the finals. And you had an opportunity just a few years ago to go on the Ultimate Fighter, and because of the way you would have to cut weight 3 times in the 6 weeks, you decided to pass on that and just go ahead and start fighting for the UFC. And seeing kind of what Amanda Cooper had to go through, did that kind of reaffirm that you made the right choice to not try to cut that weight 3 times in 6 weeks?
For sure. I'm sure if I did went to the house, that would be a big problem for me, because by that time I was very heavy. I used to walk around 140, 145 pounds to make the strawweight division weight. So I would have issues inside the house, and I'm sure I couldn't make the weight 3 times in 6 weeks. That's why I decided to not go, and I felt like Amanda went through what I was going to. So that was good to see.
Now, of course, Amanda made the weight and she was able to get into the final matchup there. And of course, I'm from Michigan and so is Amanda Cooper, so I'll be pulling for her. But what do you think about her chances becoming the Ultimate Fighter on Friday night?
Amanda is an excellent fighter, very strong, very talented. She learned a lot. To me, she improved a lot inside the house. She got there as a good fighter, but she became a great fighter inside the house. She learned a lot with us, with the assistant coaches, with everybody, and she has a tough fight in the finale, but she can do great. She have the opportunity to do it and all the talent to do it. And I talked to her. She said she had a great training camp, so I'm very excited to see this fight Friday night.
Now, I wanted to get to the coaches' challenge that happened on this season of The Ultimate Fighter. You and Joanna were shooting kind of t-shirt cannon air gun things. I don't know what exactly they were at targets, and then you had the dunk in the tank if you hit a certain spot. And I was wondering, are you secretly a spy the way you were handling that bazooka gun there?
No, I am not. I just figured out how to use the thing up there. And I just don't want to beat her in everything I can. So I was very concentrated in everything I was doing. I was being very smart and strategist, because she was trying to talk to me the whole time, and you know, kind of not concentrating in what she was doing. I was very concentrated. I wasn't paying attention for the things she was doing. I was concentrating in beat her and get this $10,000.
Now, we have a mutual friend in AJ Hiller who runs MMASignaturesUSA.com, and I know with him you helped open your own gym there in Pennsylvania, and I was wondering how has the gym been going for you so far this year?
Um, the gym to me was a dream. Since I started training BJJ, I wanted to be a black belt, and I want to open up my own gym. And I met AJ. We became partners, and we finally made this dream come true. So the gym is doing great. We're getting a lot of people. A lot of people are going there to train. The training sections are getting packed, and we are already paying the bills and everything with the students that we have now. And I'm very happy with the things that are happening in the gym now. And after this fight, I'm going there. I'm going to spend some time there working, and I want to teach people, my style of fighting and my BJJ style. And I'm very excited to go there and work a lot with these people.
Now, for your training camp for this fight, did you do most of it in Brazil or did you do some of it in the United States as well?
I started training for this fight here because I was filming The Ultimate Fighter, and I had all my coaches here with me as assistant coaches for the show. And I started training here. The strategy and the beginning of everything started here. But 8 weeks before, I went to Brazil and I started training camp there.
Now, of course, the first time you fought Joanna was in December of 2014, so that was about 18 months or so ago. And how do you feel that you have changed as a fighter since the first fight against Joanna?
Um, I'm a well-rounded fighter, and in this past almost 2 years, I grew up a lot as a fighter. I improved a lot. But in this fight, I think the difference will be my condition and my striking that got a lot better since first time we fought.
Of course, your fight is scheduled for 5 5-minute rounds for the UFC strawweight title. Do you expect this fight to go the full 25 minutes?
I am very comfortable with 25 minutes. In the gym, I go for 25 minutes all the time, doing sparring with different people all the time. Inside the octagon, it's only me and her. And last time I fought her, I was getting better and better round by round. So this time is gonna be the same. I'll get better round by round.
And what do you think is going to be different the second time around against her?
It's like I said, my striking and my conditioning. It will be the difference in this fight. I'm I improve it a lot in every area. So whatever the fight goes, I'll be comfortable. And I think she's gonna be trying to run for me, and I'll be putting a lot of pressure on her the whole time.
All right, Claudia, I'll get you out of here with this. Do you have any last words to your opponent, Joanna Jedrzejczyk, before you step inside the cage against her on Friday?
I just hope she's ready for war, because I'm going for war.
She is Claudia Gadelha, UFC strawweight top contender. You can watch her fight for the title on the Ultimate Fighter 23 finale Friday night on Fox Sports 1. And Claudia, thanks again for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. I look forward to your fight on Friday night.
Thank you.
Once again, that was Claudia Gadelha right here on Beyond the Cage. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Beyond the Cage. On the line, I have a special guest joining me. She is the UFC strawweight champion of the world. She is Joanna Jedrzejczyk. And Joanna, thanks for coming on Beyond the Cage.
Okay, cool. I'm ready.
I want to get to your last fight that you had against Valerie Letourneau that was in Australia for UFC 193. And with that, the largest live attendance ever at a UFC event. And I was wondering, what was your experience fighting in a huge stadium like that with over 50,000 people in attendance?
It was amazing. The UFC 193 in Melbourne, November 14, was just amazing show. The biggest UFC show ever. But I was super happy that I was on the same card with Ronda Rousey. And you know what? I think we will do this one more time. I know that Ronda Rousey will be back very soon, and we're gonna put on show one more time. So maybe the stadium in Dallas could be a good option to make a historical show again. Why not? But it was amazing show, amazing atmosphere. The Australian fans are very amazing. So it was good show, and for me, like of course, it was amazing that I could fight on the biggest show. But for me, the most important is fight. So more fans, better for me because then I'm getting more and more excited about, you know.
Of course, your fight is one of three that will take place during International Fight Week for the UFC here in 2016. And I was wondering, besides your fight, are there any other fights during this week that you're excited to see as a fan?
Uh, yes, I want to see Rafael dos Anjos with Eddie Alvarez. I like Rafael dos Anjos. He's doing really very good job. He's a good champion, and it's going to be really good fight. But I think that you're gonna hear and still on Thursday and on Friday after my fight. So yeah, I'm very excited for Mark Hunt with Brock Lesnar, Jose Aldo with Frankie Edgar. It's a good fight, good international fight with 3 shows in a row. Every card is amazing. So Joe Silva and Sean Shelby, the matchmakers of UFC, they did pretty good job, very good job.
As a fighter yourself, were you pretty shocked to hear that Brock Lesnar was coming back to the UFC to fight at UFC 200?
Uh, Not really. Like you know, when you retired, when you want to finish with the sport, it's difficult. You know, after 2, 3 days or 2 months or 2 years, you are like, no man, I can't live without mixed martial arts, and this is who we are. You know, so. It's difficult to retire. So I understand Brock Lesnar that he's back. You know.
Now, of course, as most fans know, I am of Polish heritage, and I'm proud to have my family come from that country. And you can see behind me on the video, I have the Polish flag behind me. So I wanted to ask just a couple questions about Poland here, real quickly for you, Joanna. And I was wondering, this is a serious question. What is your favorite filling on pierogies?
And I am like I like pierogies, but I don't eat pierogies so often, but I like the Christmas pierogies from my mom. You know, are just amazing, perfect, and I'm loving it. What about you?
My favorite is probably just traditional potato. I'm kind of a boring, plain guy, but that is my favorite. Whether my grandmother makes them or I go to one of the Polish bakeries we have here in Detroit, but that's probably my favorite.
Oh, last time I got some T-shirt from half Polish, half American guy from Detroit. That's cool. That's cool.
All right, I wanted to also, of course, ask you about your time on The Ultimate Fighter as a coach and looking over your team. Was there anyone that kind of surprised you in a positive way in terms of maybe doing better than you originally thought?
Uh, It was amazing time, amazing 6 weeks, which I spent shooting the Ultimate Fighter season 23. Like after first day, on paper, we looked better than the other team. But I'm happy for my fighters. I have a really good relation with them, with all of them. I'm very happy for them that they became maybe better fighters after this program, and I wish all of them good luck, and I think that you're gonna see some of them in the UFC very soon.
Now, how much did you train in Poland for this rematch against Claudia?
Uh, I've been training 3 months. It was probably the longest camp ever, but you could see on the open workout how I look different. I feel strong, more strong, not just physically but mentally as well. Like I said, since I arrived to Vegas, I feel more and more confident, more calm every day. So I want this fight so badly. I want to defend my title. I want to take my belt to Poland, back to Poland, and I have my goals, my dreams, and I know that Claudia Gadelha is just next opponent. I respect her so much as an opponent. She's #1 in the strawweight UFC ranking. So I'm taking this fight serious as every fight because I'm full of respect to all of my opponents, from the past and from the future. So I'm very happy and excited for this fight. I think it's a good match, and finally, you all gonna see it.
Do you expect this fight to go the full 25 minutes?
I don't know. You cannot be so dominant in every fight, So my last fight was a full distance fight, so I'm ready for 5 rounds of real war with Claudia Gadelha. But me and Claudia, we are so hungry, She wants to take this belt away from me, but I promise to you, you're gonna hear and still. So I don't wanna say that I'm gonna finish her in the first, second round. We will see what's going to happen on Friday.
All right, Joanna, I'll get you out of here with this. I actually spoke to Claudia earlier today, and she says for you to expect a war on Friday night, and I was wondering if you had any response for her.
Claudia, I'm happy that you think that you are ready for me, but you are not. You're gonna feel the strongest and the fastest hands in the UFC.
She is the champion, Joanna Jedrzejczyk, and you can follow her on Twitter at Joanna MMA. And Joanna, thanks again for coming on the show. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to your fight on Friday.
Thank you so much, Detroit.
Once again, that was Joanna Jedrzejczyk right here on Beyond the Cage. Well, you heard what Claudia and Joanna had to say about their matchup in the main event of the Ultimate Fighter 23 finale on Friday night. As far as breaking this fight down, I think it will be a little bit different than the first one. I think, as Claudia said in the interview, she really has improved in her striking since their first matchup in December of 2014. But I think Joanna has elevated her game just from an experience standpoint. I mean, since that fight in November of 2014, Claudia's fought once, and she beat Jessica Aguilar, whereas Joanna has rattled off 3 consecutive victories, knocking out Carla Esparza, knocking out Jessica Penne, and putting an absolute 5-round whooping on Valeria Returno in November of last year. And her takedown defense is some of the best in the UFC in any division. Her striking is so fast and so crisp, maybe some of the best combinations with kicks and punches of anybody in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And she just systematically breaks you down. It's a pace that gets stronger as the fight goes on. It's to me the perfect strategy. and she doesn't overthrow anything. She doesn't take too many chances. She doesn't really leave her chin out there. She knows where you're going to be and you're not going to be, and if you throw 1, she's going to hit you with 5. That's the type of strategy she's applied, and so far nobody has been able to figure that out in the world of mixed martial arts. I believe she's only lost once, even going back to kickboxing. So for Claudia to win this fight, she has to be able to get inside, get in close, and make this an ugly fight. She has to be as close to Joanna as she can. Getting this fight into the clinch is where Claudia can win, because if she can take Joanna down, we've never seen Joanna off her back, but I gotta believe that she's not throwing up submissions, and would find it hard to believe that she could out-jiu-jitsu Gadelha, who has most of her wins by submission, 6 of 13 by submission. So I don't really see Joanna being able to do that. So if Joanna fights the way she's been fighting, she shouldn't have a problem. But for Claudia, she really has to make sure her footwork is on point, that she can, most importantly, really set up her takedowns with striking, that her striking and feints are good enough to make Joanna worried about them. And I think possibly landing a big punch early would help Claudia, because if she can land that big punch early, make Joanna feel the power that she has, that can go a long way with feints and footwork to get inside, getting this fight to the ground or up against the cage, and neutralizing the striking and combinations at distance that Joanna is so good at. So while Claudia did say she was ready for a war and told Joanna to be ready for a war and is ready for 25 minutes, conditioning and weight has been something that not necessarily plagued her, but somewhat of a knock on her. And Joanna has gone 25 minutes before, and really, to me, hasn't shown no signs of slowing down in any one of her UFC fights so far, dating back to July of 2014. So I would give the conditioning edge to Joanna, but I think we will see a little bit different Claudia. I think we will see improved fighter since that matchup in December, and I think we're going to see an excellent main event. With that said, I'm going to get to the picks here for the Ultimate Fighter 23 finale. Looking at the first fight of the evening, it will again be in the lightweight division. Joaquim Silva against Andrew Holbrook. Despite the layoff, I really like the American Andrew Holbrook. I think being the bigger guy is kind of what sells me on this, and I think Silva may have a hard time dealing with that size of Andrew Holbrook. Next fight of the evening in the featherweight division, the Korean Superboy against Thiago Tavares. I think this is going to be a fantastic fight. I'm super stoked about this fight, but I'm going to go with Thiago Tavares. He's the better grappler, and I think will be able to take this fight to the ground and possibly get a submission. But boy, the Korean Superboy is really exciting, and he's a guy definitely to look out for, win or lose. Will Brooks against Ross Pearson. Ross Pearson is a veteran. He's going to be prepared for this fight. I think he's going to make it competitive, but I think Will Brooks is just at a different level. And I think despite it being his UFC debut, this is not a typical guy making his UFC debut. I think he'll be well prepared for Ross Pearson and well prepared for the pressure of being inside the octagon. Tatiana Suarez against Amanda Cooper. I think Suarez is the favorite. I probably should pick her, but it's hard for me to pick against a Michigan native. So I'm going to go with Amanda Bobbitt Cooper to become the women's Ultimate Fighter for Season 23. Andrew Sanchez against Khalil Roundtree. I think Roundtree definitely has a puncher's chance, but Sanchez is just, I think, a lot better in the grappling department and will be able to take this fight to the ground and possibly get a submission. So I think Sanchez will be the male Season 23 Ultimate Fighter. Main event of the evening, Joanna Jedrzejczyk against Claudia Gadelha for the second time. I once again think this will be a super close fight. I think there will be a finish, but I think this fight will go into the 3rd or 4th round, but I have to go with Joanna. I just think that so far no one has been able to close the distance on her to really tie her up and not allow her to throw off those amazing combinations that she is capable of. And while I think Claudia will make it close, since no one's done it, it's hard for me to go against it. So that's why I'm thinking Joanna champion will stay that way, the champion. Once again, I would like to give a shout out to my friends at MMA Fight Club, the Facebook page MMA Fight Club. Go there, like it, join the discussion. Some great stuff going on right now. Of course, share your thoughts on the Jon Jones situation and what you think about him possibly failing another out-of-competition drug test. I want to thank, of course, AJ Hiller. Mentioned him in the interview with Claudia. Of course, he's business partners with her, running Claudia Gadelha's gym there in Strasburg, Pennsylvania. So shout out to him. Of course, running MMASignaturesUSA.com, the place to go for MMA signed memorabilia. And of course, you're looking for Claudia's stuff. He's, of course, got it. Of course, I'll send a shout out to my friend Gorilla the Bear, aka Adam Nelson, great artist. Of course, he provided the cover art for our page, and I think I put it on my Instagram at @TheJimGraham. Just drew an excellent picture of Rose Namajunas. So again, check out his stuff at Gorilla the Bear on Twitter and Instagram. Also, TopRatedMMA.com, MMAforLife.ca, MMAinsider.net, our friends at the MMAcommunity.com, always giving me retweets on Twitter, so I appreciate those guys as well. Flying Brian J, always retweeting my stuff as well, so shout out to him, and he also covers mixed martial arts as well. Shout out to him. And let's see if I'm missing anybody. I think that's it. Yeah, I think I got everybody. Again, I'm your host, Jim Graham. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Graham. As I mentioned, my Instagram at @TheJimGraham. Someone stole the other one. But thanks again to Claudia and Joanna for coming on the show. And it was awesome talking to both of them. I don't often get to interview both fighters that are pitted against each other, so that was kind of cool to talk to both those tremendous ladies. So once again, I am Jim Graham. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Cage. Like our page on Facebook, facebook.com/Beyond the Cage Podcast, and subscribe to our channel right here on YouTube. So until the next show, thanks for listening to Beyond the Cage.